back to CTV's Colton Praill. He's in Banff for us. Colton, so let's talk about these meetings ahead for the Prime Minister, beginning with that crucial meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Of course, everybody was hoping that Trump would be there. That's not the case now. But what is expected to happen during that sit-down?
This was one of the key elements of the G7 summit that was really important for the Canadian officials, or for Canadian officials, going into this meeting, and certainly prior to the escalation of the conflict we saw between Iran and Israel. This was supposed to be one of the main pieces of the framework of these discussions, was not just sovereignty around the world, but support for Ukraine, and an opportunity to speak frankly with the U.S. president in front of a number of allies who support Ukraine and have been very vocal about that support for Ukraine. Obviously, the framework of these discussions and the context has changed significantly without Donald Trump being present. We already know that there was supposed to be a one-on-one between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Donald Trump. That has obviously been canceled with the American president not being here. And so the goal is still to show support for Ukraine. It's still to find progress that allies can move forward with regards to ending the conflict in Ukraine. But the big challenge is without the U.S. there, given the outsized role they play in peace talks, given the prominent position they have when it comes to communications with Vladimir Putin, it's going to be difficult to progress things in a meaningful way. Canada, the UK, Germany, France have already been very clear about their support for Ukraine. We've also seen Keir Starmer, for example, very recently backpedaling a little bit when it comes to troops on the ground in Ukraine, saying he would only do it if American forces were also there as well. And so you see that the context really is so American dependent. And the question becomes, how can you have a meaningful meeting or a progressive meeting without the Americans present? And that's the challenge for Mark Carney, not only as the person who invited Volodymyr Zelenskyy, but as the president of this summit. And it's one that we haven't had an answer from Canadian officials at this point in time. We've put out the request to see what it is that they're hoping to achieve now that the context is so different, and we still haven't heard from them. We also haven't heard from Mr. Carney in a formal sense as leader of the G7 about how this is all changing without the American president's presence here.
And we should be clear, we know Trump left in 2018 early. He left again early. This time, the important distinction is he did not leave angry. He said that a lot had been achieved. Nonetheless, he said he had to focus on Iran, a bigger priority right now. So he left for Washington. Tell us more about that, Colton.
Yeah, Donald Trump leaving last night very suddenly. He did announce it to the leaders first. We have that confirmed from sources in the PMO. But what you did see was, to your point, Trump leaving in much better spirits than in Charlevoix in 2018. He talked about the good relationships that he had built up here. He talked about the work that was being done on trade deals. But he did say, you understand why I have to go. We heard from Mr. Carney as well, just kind of briefly at the family photo last night, just speaking to reporters who were yelling out questions, saying that he was grateful for Trump's presence here, but that he understands fully why the American president did need to leave. What we did see, though, was more comments from Donald Trump after he had departed on Air Force One last night. And I want to first read you the statement, or a portion of the statement, that was issued after Trump left. Now, Trump says he hadn't seen this statement, but he did agree to sign on to it, and he believes the G7 got the wording correct. And in that statement, it says, and I want to quote here, "We urge that the resolution of the Iranian crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East, including a ceasefire in Gaza." Now, there was some reporting yesterday that the American president would not sign on to any statements that involve the word de-escalation. Sources in the Prime Minister's office say it was Mr. Carney himself who was able to convince the American president to sign on to that statement, to agree to the use of the word de-escalation. What's interesting, though, is just moments after that statement went out, speaking on Air Force One, Donald Trump said this about a possible ceasefire in Iran. Have a listen.
Not a ceasefire, and then
so something that would be permanent.
Yeah, or giving up entirely.
Now, Trump hinted that something is in the works, something he said was much bigger than a ceasefire and expected over the next 48 hours. He also said that would be the time frame to see whether or not Israel slows the escalation of their attacks on Tehran. But certainly a very different tone there from the U.S. president than the de-escalation that was being called for from other G6 leaders. And so there is still some separation in what is being presented by many of the G6 who are here today compared to the U.S. president's points. And that was part of the challenge that we saw yesterday as well.
Colton Praill for for us in Banff this morning. We will check in with you a little bit later for more on the developments there. Meantime,